that means that we are officially mining Bitcoin on top of a mountain.
So this is the moment we started mining Bitcoin on top of a mountain. So let's take you all the way back and explain how we did all of this and why we did it. So I'm going to run through a very crude explanation of how Bitcoin mining works so you guys can understand how we achieve this. And to start mining Bitcoin, we're going to need 4 things: a power supply, an internet connection, a Bitcoin miner, and a Bitcoin node. And all these come together and we can start mining Bitcoin if we have all 4 of them. So the first thing, as I said, is the power supply. So as we're hauling this up a mountain, we need a source of power that we can carry around. That's where the portable power supply comes in. This can run at full output for around 5 hours, and it's far more than enough power for what we're doing today, which is mining. We had a bunch of ports which we can use to power things, obviously the USB-C, the other USB, and then you have a 12 volt port which we could potentially use if we were maybe mining with a NerdQX, but with the Bitaxe, which we'll get onto later, we have to use this 3-prong port that you see here. So for this experiment, we'll just be using the standard outlet plug here because it allows us to attach an extension lead onto it, which we'll need later on. So that's the first thing checked off the list. The second is we need an internet connection. Now we could have used the 5G for your phone in theory, but I thought it'd be way easier if we went with this. This is a Starlink Mini, and this can pretty much get an internet connection anywhere. So I thought it was the best to use this, and it can also allow us to make videos in the future that have the potential, such as maybe mining out in the ocean. The internet speed is around 100 megabytes, I believe, which is good enough to mine Bitcoin with, and also run some other things like the phone to view the Bitaxe. The Starlink Mini is also a small and portable setup, and it doesn't really weigh that much, so it's easier to actually walk it up a mountain. So that's what we're using for the internet connection. As I said, we could have used 5G, but this is just easier to use a Starlink. I think it costs around $100 per month to actually run one of these, but you get a month for free in terms of the internet connection, and then it's $100 a month after that. So that's the internet connection covered, and that's the second kind of part of the equation. The next part of the equation is going to be the Bitcoin miner. Today we're also using a solo Bitcoin miner called the Bitaxe, which we kind of talked about 2 seconds ago. For those who are unfamiliar, this is a small Bitcoin miner with only one mining chip underneath on the board. Typically, Bitcoin miners have loads of mining chips on the board, but this only has one. It's an open source project, which means that anyone can produce one of these using the GitHub. Unfortunately, we didn't make this ourselves, but you can also buy from vendors across the world. This one came from a company in Europe called Power Mining, so shameless plug here, you can get 10% off using code Sterling, or use the link in the description. We'll touch more on the Bitaxe later, but now let's move on to the last thing, which is a Bitcoin node. So we could have used our own setup, as in we could have used our own node to actually mine with, but that would have taken a lot longer in terms of the setup, and I still haven't figured out how to actually do it in terms of running it fully for mining. So we need to use somebody else's node. Luckily, there are a whole bunch of solo Bitcoin mining nodes out there, or referred to as solo mining pools, and they allow miners to use their node to solo mine Bitcoin. As you can see here, there's a lot of pools. This is called mining pool stats, where you can see all of the Bitcoin pools. But in this video, we'll be using solo CK pools node, which we'll get into more later on in the video. So that's all the 4 things that we need for Bitcoin mining covered. And now let's talk about how we're going to actually set this up. So this is kind of like the rough estimation of what the setup would look like. First, we need the Starlink and the Bitaxe plugged into the power supply. So all we need is an extension cord to plug them both in, as you can see here. And that's pretty much the easy part done. The next step is checking that the Starlink is running. So while we're actually filming this or talking about the Starlink, it does have to be in a certain direction. As this is filmed inside as well, to get the Starlink working, I believe it has to actually be outside and facing in a certain direction. But in the Starlink app, it actually tells you which direction it should be facing. So at the top of the mountain, you do have to wait a little bit for it to find out which direction it should be facing to actually get the best connection. As this is only set up inside, it doesn't really matter. I'm just walking you through the steps of how the setup should go, and then later down in the video, we'll show you the full setup working at home, and then kind of how we mined it on top of the mounting. So once the Starlink is up and running, we can move on to connecting the Bitaxe to the Starlink. And this is where the technical side comes in with the Bitaxe. So the Bitaxe has an operating system that runs locally on your network. For example, if I try to connect the Bitaxe away from home, it won't allow me to because I'm not on the home network. So therefore, to make changes, you also need to be on the same network as the Bitaxe is currently running on, which in this instance would be the Starlink. So I'm just going to introduce you to the Axe OS. This is the dashboard basically for the Bitaxe, which allows you to make changes to the Bitaxe. As I said, we want to change the internet connection so it connects to the Starlink. To do this, we need to click on network and then type in our Starlink SSID. This is just the name of your internet connection as you would see it on your phone or other devices. And then we obviously need to put in the password for the Starlink. What it's going to do is once you actually click restart, it's going to then jump over to the Starlink connection instead of your actual home connection. So the only way that you can view it from there is to actually connect into the Starlink and then type in the IP address of the Bitaxe. Once that's done, we click save and restart. And as I said, that's going to jump to Starlink now. So we do have to click save and restart. So the restart will actually then, it will look for the Starlink. I'll maybe put some footage here of it looking for the Starlink instead of our home network. But that is basically it connecting to the Starlink. So that setup is done. Now the next part is connecting to our chosen Bitcoin node. As I said, we do have to be on the Starlink internet to access this dashboard because it's running locally on whatever Wi-Fi that you're using. So we go into that, and again I'll show you how to do this in the Axe OS. As we said today, we are using Solo CK Pool. So we have the website open up here. All we have to do is take a bunch of information from here, but because we are also doing this in Europe, we need to connect to the closest node, which is the European node, which can be found on this link here. And they also have an Australian pool. So Solo CK Pool is for those in America, EU obviously in the EU, and AU is for those down in Australia. So to do this, let's take it back to the Axe OS and let's click on settings. This is where you enter in the node information. First, we're going to need the stratum, which can be found on the pool site by here. And then we also need the port, which can be found right next to the stratum by here. And that's basically all we need from the pool information. We can take both of them and copy and paste them into these as we're doing right now. So these are where the Bitcoin miners basically direct into to start mining Bitcoin and submitting tasks to the node. So now that we've got the stratum and the port done, we do need to move on to putting in our Bitcoin address into this box here. This is how the node actually knows where to pay the Bitcoin if you hit a block. You can also add a dot and then you can name your Bitaxe. So you can just do dot Bitaxe, and that's what it will show on the pool side when you actually start mining. Once again, all of that is done and we click save and restart again. So that's going to save, restart, and then start going to Solo CK Pool and using their node. And after all that setup, we should be able to just replicate the same thing at home, but on top of a mountain. So here's basically a short clip of what we're looking at in terms of the setup. This is it fully running. So we tested it at home. You can see that you have the power generator there plugged in, and then the Starlink is plugged in to the power generator. That is currently getting internet. And then we have the Bitaxe just plugged in kind of relatively close to the Starlink in another room, and that's connected to the Starlink and started mining. So it should be a relatively easy setup from here. We just replicate this whole thing that we're doing right now and move it up a mountain. And that's pretty much it in terms of the setup that you need. So overall, if you want to pay for this setup, I will leave like a kind of cost basis, or we'll talk about the cost basis. So the Bitaxe is probably around $120. The power bank is around $50. The Starlink is $100. plus you do have to pay that monthly fee if you're using it for more than a month. And then the Bitcoin node doesn't cost anything. So you're looking kind of at around $250 for this whole setup. Now you could do it with a bigger miner, which would cost you more, or the power bank could be slightly smaller, but this one could run for 5 hours and it was obviously used for something different and maybe future videos. So it's kind of an investment into the channel, same with the Starlink, so we can do more videos like this. Now we've talked about the setup, let me explain how we're actually mining Bitcoin. So we have a Bitaxe which is mining to the node, as we said, but what is actually going on in the background? I'm going to run through a very simple explanation of what we're doing here and how mining is actually going on this Bitaxe. Mining is where you submit an answer to a calculation, very crude explanation. If the calculation is substantial enough, then you can mine the next block and get rewarded in the form of Bitcoin, which currently the block reward sits at 3.125 Bitcoin. And that's around, I think, at current price, $350K. Going back to the calculations that you're submitting, it is measured in a measurement called difficulty. You need to submit a difficulty above the current network difficulty to mine a block. So you can see different difficulties that your miner is submitting in the log section of the AxeOS. As I said, it does need to be higher than the current Bitcoin network. For example, the Bitcoin network currently sits at around 125 T. So it goes from M to G to T. That's the scale, kind of like meters to kilometers. And as you go up that scale, it gets harder to mine, obviously. On our Bitaxe here, you can see that we're submitting a difficulty of around 1,000. So that's just 1,000. T is a donation of trillion, basically. So you need to submit a difficulty that's higher than 125 trillion in terms of this difficulty number to actually hit a block. You very rarely would get a Bitaxe that does hit that, even into the T range, so even 1 trillion is very hard to get into. Whilst we've been mining, I think our current highest difficulty is only 898 G, so it's about 125 times less than what the actual network difficulty is. So that's just a little bit about difficulties on the Bitcoin network. I don't expect this to actually hit a Bitcoin block up there, but we are technically mining to the Bitcoin network through there. Once that has been submitted to the node, so the actual difficulty, it registers as a share to the node. As you can see here, this is how many shares we have submitted and if any were rejected. So we're basically submitting shares of difficulties that are higher than 1,000 to the node. And all of this is to kind of explain or basically prove that we are actually mining Bitcoin on top of a mountain when it comes to it. And we need to show that we have submitted at least one share in the AxeOS and also show on the node side that it has picked up that share. So that's the proof behind everything, to prove that we've actually mined Bitcoin. To see if we have submitted to the node side, we simply put our address into the search bar on Solo CK Pool at the top of the screen, and it will show us if our worker is active. This is how we're going to prove that we are actually mining the Bitcoin. Okay, so after all that explanation, we need to actually pick a mountain, and we decided to go for a mountain in Wales called Pen y Fan. Wales is in the UK, and Pen y Fan is around a 3-hour drive from where we are. The reason we picked it is because it's close enough and it's also considered a mountain. So it'd kind of be lying if we didn't go up a mountain and it was just a very high hill. It stands at around 3,000 feet and it's probably going to take an hour to walk up. It's a very popular walk up if you live in Wales, and this means that we're probably going to have to go very early. So to avoid traffic, we'll be going probably around 6 o'clock in the morning. Also, I don't want to get weird looks because this setup looks like we're doing some Spy Kids 3D stuff. Anyway, now we have all the setup done. We have explained what Bitcoin mining is, and we've explained where we're actually doing this. Let's actually go and climb it, and then we'll need to actually set it up there. So the night before, we did all the updates for Starlink because they regularly have updates on it. And then we got all the setup packed. So we got up bright and early in the morning and drove there, got there around 7 o'clock. This is the bottom of the mountain, and we have to walk basically all the way up there. The climb actually took around an hour and a half, but you can skip all of that time and just watch this 15-second montage of us walking up there.
So this is not the top of Penavan, which is the mountain, it's the other side of it. If you can see, that is Penavan up there, and we just thought that maybe it's better to do it on the other side. It's about the same height, but it's less, what would you say, crowded, so people don't look at us like we just spawned something out of Spy Kids 3D.
So now it's actually time to start mining, and this next part is probably pretty bad audio because it's very windy up there, but it goes kind of through the whole process and setup, and then finally shows us mining. So there's going to be clips of different things such as the AXOS, the pool dashboard, us actually doing the setup, and just kind of some views for content purposes basically. So I'll let you enjoy kind of this whole setup of Bitcoin mining, and hopefully you enjoy this part of the video, and obviously make sure to like and subscribe if you want to see more stuff like this.
So we've got the Bitaxe, which is right here, and then we have the power generator, we have the plug, Starlink plug and Starlink. So we just need to do this whole setup that we went through at the start. So it's this into here, and this into there, and then Starlink plug into there, perfect, and then plug the Starlink in, and this is where it comes in that we need to actually direct it to north. Moment of truth, turn on 100%. Okay, so that's going, should be powering the Starlink now. If we just see in there, and then I've got a view. It's a lovely view, and that is Penavan right up there. So here we are. I don't know if the audio is great on this, but this is the final step as you just saw. So I'm going to plug this in right now, and hopefully we can start mining Bitcoin, and we'll know if it shows up there. So I got it on here, and then I'm just gonna get my brother to plug this in to there. I'll plug it in with that. Just there we go. So it is powering on, and it's trying to connect, as you can see in there, to the Starlink, which is right there. And as soon as we have a share submitted, that means that we are officially mining Bitcoin on top of a mountain. So let's just wait for that to actually boot up. So there you go, we are officially mining Bitcoin on top of a mountain using Starlink and this power generator. As you can see in there, you have the pool that we're connected to, or the node, and we'll look on the actual AXOS in a minute. You can see the hash rate, and you can see that we've actually submitted a share there. Currently at 38 degrees, which is actually very low for a Bitaxe, and it's pretty cold up here. So let's take it over to the computer screen or the phone screen, and we'll show you what this actually looks like and show us submitting shares. Okay, so we go to, what do we go to? Logs, and then show logs. You can see us actually submitting shares to the network. You stop scrolling. This one by here is a mining submit to the pool, and it keeps submitting at different difficulty, and that's it. So you have our logs there, and then if we take that off, we can actually go over to EU solo CK pool, and you can see in our stats we have one worker down here. Wait for it to refresh and actually submit. So you can see in this session that we have up here you can actually see on the dashboard how many shares we've actually submitted, the shares there. So we can go to pool settings and copy that and go to CK stats and enter that in, and it says last share. Oh, we need the pool to actually recognize a share first. Aha! Last share recently.
So that's how I mined Bitcoin on top of a mountain. Now, everything that I've covered in this video and everything you need to go out and do this yourself will be linked in the description. I also want to give a massive shout out to Scott, who is the creator of the Bitaxe, and this video probably wouldn't be possible without a Bitaxe miner, because we'd actually have to carry a massive Bitcoin miner, which is an ASIC, up a mountain, which weighs, I don't know, 10 kilograms, something like that. So we definitely wouldn't want to do that. But if you want to learn more about solo Bitcoin mining movement, then join the OSMU Discord or the Bitaxe worldwide community on X. I hope you guys enjoyed, and you can let me know if you want to see more videos like this. Make sure you share it around, like the video, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.